This podcast is brought to you by the team at New Zealand Trucking Magazine. Remember to get your hands on the latest issue from your favourite retailer or subscribe now at nztrucking.co.nz.
Keep on moving, the official podcast of New Zealand Trucking Media.
Hello and welcome. Today we are having a chat with Dan Kahn, Chief Technology Officer and co-founder of Hiringa Energy. Dan, thanks for joining us.
Yeah, no problem.
Now, regular readers of the magazine will be familiar with Taranaki-based Hiringa Energy. It's a company that is doing big things in the space of alternative fuel and hydrogen-powered fuel cell commercial vehicles. But Dan, for those who might have missed the articles or who are listening from outside of New Zealand, maybe you can give us a better idea of who and what Hiringa Energy is.
Sure. Yeah, we are really sort of an energy project focused company. So really, we're a startup. We're focused on kind of breaking down or removing the barriers to adopting hydrogen as whether a green transport fuel or as an alternative industrial feedstock into other processes. We were founded a little over 5 years ago, and sort of our employee base is sort of a mix of folks like me who have predominantly a background in clean technology, and also quite a few members from the conventional energy sector, which is a big reason why we're located in Taranaki, because we need to ensure that the infrastructure that we're building is, safe from a hazardous substances point of view and high pressure gas, but also that we're able to build projects at scale to, service the transport industry here in New Zealand and have an impact on overall emissions.
So in that time, in those 5 years, how much has let's call it the energy transition, how much has that changed in that time? My guess is it's changed quite a lot. The industry is advancing at quite a rapid pace at the moment, isn't it?
Yeah, it's changed a whole lot. I mean, we used to joke about how we were like the lone guy at the party dancing by themselves right when the band starts and no one else is there. And then slowly now people are joining us, I guess, in terms of on this transition. For me, I've spent my whole working career in the clean technology space, and what started as something that you intended for a career with essentially a lab coat on is now something where we're fortunate enough to be able to have conversations like this with industry to really start adopting this technology in their business as usual. So like I said, over that 5-year time period, we've really gone from having a vision around this to, now I would say hydrogen and particularly, but also with almost, renewable energy and energy transition technologies are starting to become very much focused, not just in the medium and long term, but actually in the short term planning for businesses across, whether it's transport, but also heavy industrial users and chemical feedstocks, things like that. So it's really an exciting time, in my point of view, to really start seeing some tangible progress in this space.
Right, yeah. Over the last few months, there's been quite a lot of news coming out from yourselves about some projects on the go, partnerships with Waitomo, TR Group. Can you tell us a little bit about those and maybe what's on the drawing board for the future?
Sure. Yeah. So if you look at sort of the core infrastructure network that we're building across New Zealand, which we're starting with sort of 4 high-capacity green hydrogen refueling stations on the North Island, and really in the next few years, rapidly trying to expand that to about 24, 25 stations in sort of 3 to 4 years beyond that. And the really key part about that, I think, is if you look at hydrogen and what it offers, I guess, to the transport industry, whether it's fast refueling or, bigger payloads or longer range, compared to sort of the other electric alternatives. It's really all about trying to create a sort of business as usual experience. And so with that, that's why our partners, such as Waitomo and TR Group, are actually super important because, from a where the infrastructure is located point of view, working with sort of conventional fuel stop operators that are, moving into the alternative fuel space helps us, find places to locate these stations that are convenient for the transport industry, which is, ultimately what we're trying to achieve here is a transition and for them. So it's really important that these stations are located in places that are convenient, that the user experience of coming to the station also is, the same as you would feel today with a diesel truck. So partnership with Waitomo is really important for us getting that right. And likewise, on the sort of market side, there's no point in us building these refueling stations unless there's, trucks to put them in. So, our partnership with TR Group really is so important for us to understand, how operators use these vehicles, what vehicles are suitable and which ones are not. There's all kinds of different companies developing new energy vehicles, whether it's OEMs or startups. And, if they don't get the truck right, then nobody's going to adopt it or use it because nobody is going to pick a technology that is, much of a compromise compared to today. So TR Group has really helped us go from, well, we know what a truck looks like to we know actually quite a bit more of the details around, how important things, which obviously to this audience are going to be obvious, but things like axle weight configurations, things like the overall dimensions of whether it's a prime mover or a rigid chassis and how critical that is to actually making their business successful. And so without TR Group, we would never have been able to understand the nuance. And, they're such a key partner for us in terms of, again, trying to provide a refueling infrastructure or solution to decarbonizing freight that is actually suitable for the heavy transport industry. Because that's ultimately what we need to achieve for people to adopt the technology, for us to make an impact and move away from those emissions.
So Dion, if we look at the New Zealand picture, how do we compare to overseas markets when it comes to hydrogen, FCEVs, clean energy, and so on?
Hydrogen in New Zealand is really starting to emerge. We've had some great leadership from companies like Hyundai, Toyota, from local integrating companies like Global Bus Ventures, Emirates Team New Zealand, where people have taken those first steps to bring in vehicles, create programs, and really show that this technology is here. It's being used in places overseas, and we've even done incredibly innovative things, as I mentioned before, like the Team New Zealand Chase Boat, in which that was a locally built and integrated, 10-meter, chase boat. Marine vessel that is doing, over 50 knots on the water, and that project was done in something like, 9 months. And so there's nowhere else in the world that's doing stuff like that. So we actually have a huge local capability from an integration point of view that I think a lot of people here in New Zealand don't really know about. But I think what's exciting about New Zealand is actually the opportunity that is in front of us. We have a largely powered by renewable electricity and energy system that we can utilize to make hydrogen, so it's actually green and making a difference on emissions. But we also have a really, I guess, consolidated network where, from an infrastructure point of view, we can put in something like, 4, 6, 8 refueling stations and have substantial coverage of the main freight corridors that we use here in New Zealand. And, that's very unique. Where I'm from, back in the United States, you can have 40 refueling stations in Los Angeles and you can't even drive to, the state north of there. So what we can achieve here in New Zealand from an infrastructure point of view is so powerful because if we actually locate these refueling stations in sort of key parts of the freight network, then it's not just one I guess, industry or or subset within the transport industry that needs to kind of take the plunge to unlock everything. This way we can have, whether it's line haul, whether it's bulk haul, or whether it's people moving refrigerated goods, or all across all the different sectors, we can in some way, shape, or form likely provide suitable infrastructure with a very small amount of total stations. And that helps us get the utilization up from day one. And we can actually offer a service to quite a large cross section of the industry from day one. So, like I'm saying before, that's quite unique. Similar, in Europe, with, yes, the distances are of a similar distance, but the crossing the borders makes that policy alignment really difficult. So we're in a fortunate position where, because of our borders, which is the ocean, it really helps us kind of consolidate that effort and really, have something that might be suitable to a much larger cross section of the industry.
Yeah, absolutely. So, something like this is very much something that can't be done alone. There's obviously a definite need for, as you've already outlined, a lot of the partnerships that you have. And I suppose also government needs to come to the party as well, don't they? One of your colleagues, Dan Kahn, has written for us in the magazine, and he's commented on incentives and RUC exemptions and all these things, all these other pieces of the puzzle that need to come together to make this transition happen, or at the very least to kick it off the ground.
It is really important, and we have been fortunate enough that we've received concessional debt to support the infrastructure rollout that I mentioned before. That's administered by ECA from the Crown Infrastructure Partners. Moving forward, it is really important to have government involvement to help accelerate the transition, particularly if there's mandates or the big push to have this transition happen. Then there needs to be things that help with that. We definitely see a role for ongoing OpEx support being important, particularly in this early adoption stage. We have been big advocates for extending the RUC exemption just simply because it's a mechanism that's here and now. And as the overall penetration of these zero-emission vehicles remains quite low in the fleet, we see that it can be kind of a very easy win in the beginning. Now, obviously, the RUC is used for a very specific purpose. So should, additional or emissions-based incentives that would overall, provide the same sort of advantage for transitioning to a technology like this, whether it's an emission-based, whatever the sort of proposed mechanisms that are coming in, some of which are associated with a fee based on the overall emissions profile of the vehicle. We would just continue to encourage that there are some ongoing operating advantages for operators that take up these types of technologies in these early stages, to encourage over the life of the vehicle, or incentivize over the life of the vehicle, that they remain competitive in a very sort of low margin environment. We also see things that are very supportive in terms of, taking a look or re-examining some of the VDAM constraints around these vehicles, because whether it's weight or length challenges, where we operate sort of in, a fairly constrained space here in New Zealand, being open to a conversation around what can we do to take a look at some of those that would allow us, potentially better market access to these technologies, because as you know, we do have very specific requirements here in New Zealand, and a lot of these OEMs or early vehicle integrators, are only going to do very small production runs of some of these vehicles. So we are really actively trying to encourage some of these manufacturers to consider New Zealand as an early commercial demonstration environment, because of what I mentioned we can do with the infrastructure. So from government's perspective, being open and being able to have some conversations with the manufacturers of these vehicles to allow them to bring in, maybe some of the vehicle platforms they're looking at that are suitable for New Zealand, but more designed around the Australian road regulations. That there is, consideration around taking a look at the VDAM, and if there's, opportunities to, provide dispensation or exemptions around some of the specific requirements, that would help us a lot in terms of bringing in specific vehicle types.
Yeah, no doubt. Okay, so I guess the big question that would be on the lips of every truckie with diesel in their veins, how do these vehicles compare to internal combustion and I suppose to battery electric vehicles, which are very much sort of in the limelight at the moment as well? Have you driven an FC EV? What are they like to drive? What can you tell us from that perspective?
Yeah, no, I knew this question was coming, so I was very I was happy to say that with our partners like TR Group, I was fortunate enough to spend a bit of time driving some of our normal diesel trucks that we have here in New Zealand, and then for the last month or so, we were fortunate enough to travel around into North America and Europe and drive a good cross section of some of the FCEV vehicles that are available today in those markets. And yeah, I mean, you're gonna have to take it with a grain of salt because I've probably driven trucks about enough times you can count on my hands, but. The difference between the FCEV and the ICE vehicles, it's very apparent. I mean, for those of you who've maybe driven BEV vehicles, it's very similar. The difference being that the FCEVs are much larger, but the low end, sort of torque performance and is amazing. The pickup with these vehicles, and often, they'll run like 3 gears on a 6-gear transmission. So, you're not shifting gears as you're accelerating. They really just put the foot down and go. For me, again, because I haven't really driven too many trucks, it was incredible to me how fast I kind of normalized the experience in terms of being comfortable driving, not, going through all the shifts that were very apparent when I was driving the diesel trucks. And I guess what I can say, and I definitely don't want to put words in the mouth of our partner TR Group, but I saw each one of those guys get out all the different trucks we drove with pretty big smiles on their faces. So I don't think it was just me who enjoyed it. But it was very noticeable in terms of, particularly we were able to drive a couple of the trucks loaded, which obviously is really important.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it was, again, amazing how quickly they kind of got up to cruising speed without feeling like they were working very hard.
Obstacle to overcome, I think, will be that perception, won't it, on the part of the driver? But I also think very much like we're seeing with electric cars, and once you're actually in the vehicle and you're actually driving it, and you're used to it, and you know what it's all about, I think those perceptions do change very quickly. So when do you think we'll start seeing hydrogen-powered vehicles on the road in New Zealand?
Well, I think we're lucky enough that some of these vehicles are here already. So we have the NZ Post Hyundai vehicle, yes, which is really great to see. We have some light-duty vehicles that you might see around in the Auckland area and the Hyundai Nexo as well, which have been around here in New Zealand for a couple of years. And if you're in the Auckland area around the harbour, you might see the chase boat foiling around the Gulf, which is pretty incredible as well. But really, we're looking at getting our stations really commissioned and up and running sort of the beginning part of next year, and vehicles trickling in for that. Oh, and I forgot, you might also jump on the bus in Auckland as well. That GBV sort of built locally.
Yes, yeah, true, yeah.
And is operating today. So they are around. But really, with our network, we'll be sort of putting the stations, getting commissions for the beginning part of next year, and the vehicles starting to trickle in along that. I know some of the OEMs we've mentioned before have plans to bring in more vehicles before the end of the year. And, really next year will be as far as we're concerned, sort of the beginning of that real, commercial adoption stage where you'll be starting to see them, I think, in your daily life. Which is really exciting. Yeah, we've all had our challenges in terms of the delays we've seen with today's environment, COVID, supply chain. But I think really, truly, next year will start to be, people will start to have their goods delivered and mail and parcels and all kinds of stuff with the green freight miles, which is the beginning of something really exciting.
Yeah. So Dan, talking about specifically the vehicles that you guys will be offering alongside TR Group, what sort of operations will they be suited to? Where will we see them operating?
I think really the best people to talk to about that would be TR Group and sort of the other OEMs in the market. But, compared to sort of the battery electric vehicles, we certainly look at, offerings that require, higher range than right now. People are looking at zero emissions and sort of looking at maybe 1, 2, maybe 300-kilometer ranges. And we're really targeting upwards of over 400 to 500 to sort of 600. So right. It's really in that space. In terms of when we look at, what they're going to be suited for, the weight class, I think really is a discussion with the vehicle provider themselves to make sure that in your configuration, whatever it may be, or if you have any specifics, that how the rigging plays out and things like that. You have a conversation with the likes of TR Group to make sure you understand and they understand exactly what you need.
Yeah. It's quite interesting. You mentioned that range, which is obviously also a huge consideration for alternative propulsion vehicles, and up to 600 kilometers. I think that's quite substantial. And obviously, as you mentioned, your refueling network being spaced out the way it will be. There's probably no reason you couldn't drive one from Auckland to Invercargill, for example.
Yeah. I mean, we hope that as we expand and as the network becomes I guess more far-reaching, that really there's no limits in terms of getting this technology out on the roads and being used to deliver product.
Yeah. So as you mentioned, first vehicles expected on the road next year, hopefully. What can fleets start doing now to prepare for the future? What should they be thinking about?
I think it's really about starting to have these conversations about people in this space. I think, as I mentioned at the beginning of this, at least from an infrastructure point of view, our mission is to make adopting zero emission technologies into the fleet as easy as possible. We think hydrogen offers a really good solution for folks who need that sort of business as usual infrastructure type of applications where they might be limited with respect to their own depots, or that it's just the way their business needs to operate is to fuel on the road or to fuel at like a conventional diesel station today. So we really want to make sure we understand from you, what are the challenges and what can we do with, given the constraints of where the technology is at today and where it's going, but what can we do in terms of making that easier? Because I think there's a lot of pressure on the transport industry to make a change. And, there's not always a lot of people out there trying to help. And I think, as I mentioned before we started speaking with the TR Group, like I said, I could tell you what a truck looks like, and that's about it. And, it's that input from the transport industry in terms of, hey, we would look at going to green or zero emission technology if, A, B, C, D. And we want to hear those things and do what we can to sort of make it happen, because that's the most important. So when you're asking me, what can you do to be prepared? I think it's start having those engagements, have a conversation with TR Group about what they see is happening. Have a conversation with Hyundai, who's, offering a different vehicle type into the market, and, see what you get out of it. And, for a lot of people at this stage, maybe that's not going to be suitable, but have with your own fleet, start to think about, this transition is coming, and what would we need to make it happen? Because whether it's engaging with us or whether it's engaging with government, I think it's really important to clearly articulate what those needs are so that the policy settings can be right, that the infrastructure can be built right, and that we can be advocating for getting the right vehicles for what we need here, what we need here for you. I think there's we have a good window of time where we can build this infrastructure and really be world leading in terms of the overall industry, and then actually really attract some of the bigger OEMs or other players, or the OEMs who are here already, to deliver the right types of trucks for us in New Zealand. If we don't move quickly enough, or we don't indicate that we're going to have a demand for some of this technology, some of the other markets will get infrastructure in place to kind of open it up faster, and then we'll have more challenges getting the trucks that we need for New Zealand, just because of the relative bespoke elements of the ways that trucks are used here.
Yeah, absolutely. So those conversations obviously key, and I think on the other hand, I think a lot of people sort of get stuck in the mindset of doing things a certain way. And yes, I mean, diesel is cleaner and more efficient than it's ever been, and it's not going to be replaced anytime soon. But yeah, there's no doubt that as the move to alternative propulsion accelerates, there won't be a one size fits all silver bullet approach. And yeah, I think you guys you're onto a real good thing, and I'm really excited for what the future holds.
Yeah, thanks. So are we.
Yeah, absolutely. We're in for some interesting times indeed. Dan, thank you so much for joining us. Dan Kahn, Chief Technology Officer and co-founder of Hiringa Energy. Really enjoyed the conversation, and hope to catch up again sometime soon.
Yeah, likewise, and it's my pleasure.
The Keep On Moving podcast is a production of New Zealand Trucking Media.